Hi, everybody. This is Sarah Whitaker.
And Salty Dalty.
You. Here for Working the World, Episode 8, Dangerous Styles of Wrestling, such as high flying and strong style. Be sure to find us on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube under the channel Lady Morg 0240. Well then, how has our week been?
It'd be easier to say how it hasn't been. Let's see. Let's go ahead and start off with I got sick earlier in the week. Had a massive allergy flare-up, which anybody who knows me, that's, genetic predisposition that I have. And then I go to PWP on Thursday, go see a couple friends there at the show, and turns out one of the workers wasn't able to make it, and they asked me for the first time in 6.5 years, hey, would you like to be on the guard tonight? And you know that old saying that Cuco Santiago used to tell me, be sure to bring your gear
bag
every single show? Well, my dumb ass didn't go and do that. Because I came straight from work and forgot to put it in the car. So I had to rush back in Omaha rush hour traffic, go to the house, get the gear bag, go back out to the car, make sure it still fits in the car, go in there, change, and wrestle for the first time since December last year. So, which I was surprised about the reaction I got. Thanks to PWP for having me back. I didn't know that that'd be an option here in the future. But hey, I look at it as a pretty good opportunity. I wouldn't even say, even's like, okay, good seeing. It's like, no, I think this might open a door. We'll see what happens. So.
Awesome sauce.
And you want to tell what happened to you a little bit earlier?
Oh, yeah. I had to go to the dentist because one of my fillings fell out.
Yeah. Emergency dental visit.
And there's only one place open on a Saturday. And I'm still feeling the effects of it as well as $1,800 later. But at the same time, it's like, they feel solid. I mean, it's like I don't have to worry about them, like, sliding like I used to with the ones I got at the last place that I went to. And it's like... But they've been in there for, like, 10 years. So, I mean, it's like...
You always make sure that never trust a British dentist. I'm sorry.
Oh.
That's all I gotta say.
Well... Okay, so here we are ready to talk about the jargon of the day.
All right.
Pardon me, I'm doing it too. All right, jargon of the day. Flippity-doos, potatoes, and strong style.
That second one and last one are ones that I'm really familiar with.
Alrighty, explain the concept of flippity-doos. It's kind of like high-flying, only there's no rhyme or reason.
Well, basically, the whole thing about it kind of started... like in Mexico, where their style's very acrobatically based, it's supposed to be very fluid and all that. There's not a lot of, or a ton of, especially back then, more days, they do a little bit more now, but there wasn't a lot of hard bumping there, especially because the rings in Mexico, to my knowledge, were very, very stiff, so they came up with a style that'd be very entertaining, very fluid, and they went with the Lucha Libre, roll out everything, head scissors, catch an arm drag, roll around with it. So it's much more low impact than, say, taking a flat back bump on the ring, which, hey, I got to hand it to them. A lot of these guys are wrestling well into their 70s, like Mil Mascaras. So even though I think he retired a couple of years ago, he went and did that style for years and years and years and years and made a good living at it. So I can't really complain, but the reason why I think a lot of people complain about the flippity-doos here in America is that style is not integrated for the wrestling fan from the get-go, because America and their wrestling style's always been off storytelling, being able to, have the good guy conquer the bad guy, white hat, black hat, white hat goes over, and they're focusing more on the actual flips themselves than telling the story using the flips. That seems to be, and there are also some guys that are just jealous and bitching about anything because they're bitter and they can't do this stuff and get over with it, and it's like, well, why not just, complain about what you can't do instead of just realizing, wow, this is something incredible here. So,
alrighty, potatoes.
Something I'm very, very familiar with. So getting trained by two of the stiffest guys in the history in the Midwest. Potato is when you hit somebody for real.
Yep, stiff shots.
And I would say, I'd say that there's kind of a little bit of a little bit like a elevation, like steps to it. It's like there's light, then there's solid, then there's snug, then there's stiff, and then there's a potato.
Oh, really?
In my opinion, anyway, because like you can hit somebody loosely and still make sound off of it, or you can really tense up but not throw it in all the way, and then you can just whack, like strong style.
Strong style is when these moves of potatoes and whatnot are actually considered run-of-the-mill wrestling moves.
Yeah, and obviously the whole thing with that started in Japan, and not a lot of people know why that started. And according to Al Snow, and I trust that he's a very credible source because he's been in the wrestling business since I was swimming ball to ball waiting to become a bastard. But he said the reason that they had to start really laying into each other in Japan was because they got so, especially like the photographers over there for the weekly magazines, got so good at capturing their, like if they missed by just a quarter inch on a hold, that you could actually see it in the picture as the guy's selling. So they said in order to, counteract that, we've actually got to lay him in here and be able to make sure that, like there's no pre-selling or pre-bumping or anything. Everything's got to connect. And of course, the culture in Japan's a lot different than it is here because everybody in Japan pretty much, for the most part, whether or not you're a, high school student, college, whatever, has played sports in some time in their life. And the whole thing is that they like seeing people go and dig down deep as far as they can to be able to go and try to win something. Basically, defend your honor. And that's a lot of where the Japanese psychology comes from. Even a heel can get a pop for kicking out of a big move because he wants to win in Japan. So that's kind of, some of the psychology over there.
Alrighty, so, sorry, kind of lost track of my mind because I was imagining all of the matches in Japan, especially some of the hardcore girls matches that I've seen with ladders and.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's like back in the day when I was wrestling and trying to imagine myself going to Japan, and then I actually watched Japan, and it's like, oh my God, can I really take those hits?
Anybody that gets hit like I did when I first started getting in, I think could probably do that, but at the same time, you never know unless you actually go and try it. It's like my potato tolerance is through the roof, and that's kind of something that I'm glad that I have with the training that I had, because one of my trainers was highly influenced by Japanese wrestling and wanted to kind of teach a little bit of that style and that psychology to us, as well as some of their teaching methods over there, which is pretty much, well, you're gonna take it for real, kid.
Alrighty, so let's talk about the dangers of flippity doos. I mean, because it's like you see all of these wrestlers that have to make one spot higher than the other and just keep climbing and keep climbing until they can't get any higher, and they start breaking themselves in their 30s trying to make all these wrestling moves that they're putting forth. I mean, to get the next big high.
Yeah,
and
trying to top themselves constantly to the point where the ceiling for risk to reward gets so high in the risk that it's like, why do that? I mean, like Mick Foley kind of painted himself into that box too, even though he technically wasn't a flippity dude. He'd take really, really hard bumps and, like not anything like super dangerous, but they just, hurt when he took them. It's like that's not anything that's gonna break an elbow, break a knee, gonna break a hip or bone, but at the same time he's landing flat on a hard surface, really, really hard. Like one time I saw him, I think this was his last match in WCW, where he actually got beeled off of the top rope from the apron to the exposed concrete floor by Kevin Sullivan.
Ouch.
About 8 feet high in the air, and if you kind of said it's probably like 14 feet from your head to the ground coming down on. It was the darndest thing I ever saw in my life as far as taking a bump like from ring level. But a lot of these guys with their I gotta give them credit. They're doing things creatively, athletically that I could never do. Let's just face facts, guys. I've been able to throw drop kicks in the past, be able to drop an elbow off the top rope, do a moonsault over the top rope from the apron to the inside of the ring, head springs, skip ups, whatever. But I didn't base a whole match off of doing that kind of offense. I would try to go highs and lows. That's how I was taught. And basically what you said earlier was the same thing that Undertaker said. It's like they're trying to base their matches off of doing these high-risk moves to get the pops instead of focusing on telling a story, because you could tell a story just by a look and looking at the crowd of somebody like that. Somebody who I thought was a master at that was Psycho Sid Vicious. He just look at the crowd, snap his head, and the people would pop, and then he just tease for even like a choke slam, something simple like that, and they're focusing on using these moves to get those same pops, and it's like, think harder, not smarter, which, hey, I've got to applaud their effort, but there's a psychology behind what those moves are going to do. And plus also, what if you get to like a Super A show like a WrestleMania main event and you've seen like 20 of those dives, it doesn't mean as much anymore when you try to do it in your match. So
that's why we see videos of indie darlings going off of basketball hoops, going off of balconies, off of buildings, off of rooftops.
When are we going to have somebody do a skydiving match? That's what I want to know. Actually, no. I wish I would have said that. Somebody's going to do it now.
But for those of us who don't, some people don't know, what exactly a flippity-doo wrestler would be like. Other than watching, like, the luchadors. Mm-hmm. Like, who would be a good mainstream?
Teddy Hart.
Yeah.
Teddy Hart. He was kind of the first wrestler that comes to mind whenever I see flippity-doos, because the stuff that he could do is so spectacular. But at the same time, I just don't get it. But it just doesn't seem to have as much rhyme or reason to it. Especially with the family that he comes from and, the way that they taught over there. And they were highly, their style in Calgary was highly psychological and, everything's supposed to mean something. I've seen a couple of matches of his, just my opinion, that he just go out there and do stuff just to do it, and it doesn't mean anything when he did it. So, unless it's, building to the next thing, which is even more spectacular, more dangerous, and more, I would say unbelievable to an extent. So I don't want to stand here and criticize nobody because I'm not the greatest wrestler in the world, but at the same time, I kind of understand that risk reward and try and make everything mean something in the match, the value in that.
So would there be a difference, like, psychologically wise, between a high flyer and a flippity-doo wrestler?
Yes. A high flyer could be somebody like, for example, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, great example of a high-flying wrestler. He was highly athletic with his style. For example, he'd be working a headlock. Say he was working with a big man like an Ox Baker. Ox Baker would pick him up like he's going to suplex him, throw him off, and he'd land on his feet. Tell that story of how big and strong Ox is, but how athletic and nimble Jimmy is, and neither one has to take a bump, and it gets their point across of what they're trying to accomplish with the match. He'd do the Superfly splash off the top, even off top of the cage, like you saw in Madison Square Garden with Don Morocco. But Jimmy would also have highs and lows to his work. These guys nowadays are not really having any lows. They're afraid if they keep don't stop moving, that the crowd's going to stop. Sometimes you need the crowd to stop to be able to let them catch their breath instead of go ping pong, ping pong, ping pong, and then, do a double kneeling pose at the end.
So, double kneeling pose.
Well, like a Ricochet and Will Ospreay. Everything they do is so, incredible, athletically so fluid, and plus they don't probably have to even call anything because they've done this, time and time again. But at the same time, it's like having a whole, because I'm actually seeing indie cards where that's the only thing they serve on there is Flippity Doos. And it's like, okay, well, eventually, if I just have slice after pizza, slice after pizza, slice after pizza, and I'm at a buffet, I'm eventually going to want a taco or some sushi. And it's like, I think Flippity Doos on the card, like the cruiserweight division in WCW, best way to put that. Or even in WWE when they, bought WCW and brought over a lot of those people before they got integrated in the heavyweights. I was going to say, I thought the cruiserweight division was a wonderful dish to serve on the card. And it was the perfect dish to start at the beginning of the card because it got the people amped, got them ready, and then they'd put something like a Joe Gomez against Steve Mongo McMichael. Never mind.
Now, on the flip side, we know companies like Circus Olay that serve almost nothing but just high altitude stunts and whatnot. They do make a lot of money. What are the more profitable sides to Flippity Doos?
Well, number one, it is a sight to behold, and it is something that you're not going to see the everyday person do. But then again, I think that's also a way to divide your audience because some people like those everyday wrestlers, like Mick Foley, for example. Going back to him, his what he did in ring was so phenomenal. But with his look, he looked like a common dude's, with his hair pulled back in a fountain, with the bangs hang down, with the cactus boots and all that. But if you took all that off him, he'd just look like a normal dude down the street. I mean, it's you can't take a dude, for example, Snuka and have him look like an everyman. So it's you have kind of two trains of thought on this: the everyman and the larger-than-life, looking wrestler. And it's I think that there needs to be a mixture of both in there because both psychologies work as far as that. It's guys with 20-inch arms, the guys with the amazing athleticism, and the guys that look like the regular people coming in that they can relate to. But I was gonna say the upside to it is that it is something that not the everyday person can do and appreciate. It is highly entertaining, but I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb and say I would dial that style back a little bit and try to make the flips mean a little more sense and slow down a little bit as far as hey, do a spot, then slow down, wrestle, go back to flips. Something like that, because they just go bing, bum, 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 boom, and don't even, because it does say wrestling on the marquee. Yes.
That is a fair point.
Yeah, it does say wrestling on the marquee. I hate this guy because of his stolen valor, but something that Manny Fernandez said one time is that, because he trained Homicide, and he wrestled in Florida, Texas, all that. He was Dusty Rhodes' tag team partner for a while. He trained Homicide, who wrestled in TNA, and he said that he taught Homicide, hey, you can go out there and do all that stuff, but you got to know when to slow it down, grab a hold so that people can catch their breath, and also make it look like you're trying to win a damn wrestling match instead of just trying to go out there and do stunts.
Right.
So, because one of the things that Chris Habeas, promoter that, director of operations over at PWP, told me when I was first breaking in and working for him, you should either be trying to win or trying to not lose in a wrestling match. And doing all these flips, they're doing it not even trying to win.
Right.
That's my bitch about it.
So, going back to the concept of the everyman and stuff like that, is it just me or except for the costumes maybe, but it's Japan seems to favor the everyman, but their strong style goes to the lengths of Superhuman.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say their work is very credible over in Japan because it's a lot of people obviously in Japan are trained in martial arts or do baseball and all that, so they get that, but they still hold these guys up on a pedestal because of the brutal training that they have to go to even get into the business over there. For example, the young boys used to have to go for All Japan, wash Giant Baba's back in the shower because he couldn't reach behind. He was so beat up and, limited because of his, health issues at that point and his lack of mobility. And it's like that's the kind of things that you had to do to break into Japan. And, I hear it's very similar still nowadays, like, paying for a cab for a wrestler to go ahead and go to the hotel out of your own money when you're a young boy, stuff like that. But I think they do get paid over there to actually go and train now if they sign up for it. But it's a long-winded process. But people know that, they see that, and they respect it over there. They don't have the, wrestling's fake thing over there. No, it's respected over there for damn sure.
Well, do you think there would be more of a respect for professional wrestling if the training were put on a higher pedestal as they are in Japan?
Yes, and not only that, it was back in the day because, like, for example, back in the olden days, you had to know somebody or be like a second-generation guy to go and break in. The first guy that actually had, like, a wrestling school open to the public was Pretty Boy Larry Sharp in the Monster Factory. He's the one that kind of made available to the public to go and train and break in. But guys like Vern Gagne or Eddie Graham, it was invite only. It's like, hey, you think you have what it takes to come through our training camp. Florida and Minnesota were the two hardest places to break in, especially when Billy Robinson was breaking people in Minneapolis with Vern, because he would legitimately shoot on every single person that came through that camp. And Florida, guys like Bob Roop and Gordon Nelson, they'd stretch everybody and beat them up. And the Carolinas, too. Gene and Ole Anderson were famous for that, too. And Al Snow actually has a story about it on YouTube where, like, Gene's actually going and trying to bite the skin off his back and all that, and Ole's actually trying to have to pull Gene off in, like, the late 70s or something like that. But wrestling, because of one of the previous episodes, them talking about that in one of the New York newspapers, this is the big fix and all that, that's kind of what kind of made credibility for pro wrestling here questionable in some people's eyes.
You could almost say in the territory days that was the precursor to strong style, because it seemed to, like, get rough and then get easier, but then they had to make it rough again in order to Yeah, well, I was going to say is, like, a lot of those old-timers, even over here in America, would lay their shit in. Maybe not as in the same way Japan, but they would, forearm you in the chest really hard. And whenever they throw a punch, they'd hit you in a safe place, but they'd lay it in. So, but it was more working still here. It's like there was more cooperation going. In Japan, it's almost like you had to go and fight for even your own slightest bit of offense. There was a little bit more cooperation here in America. Right. Is there anybody in the Americas that you know that still kind of practices strong style?
Well, there's a lot of people, especially because there's a lot of I think New Japan actually has a training center out in L.A. somewhere.
Oh, nice.
Yep. I know that Dragon Gate's had a lot of guys coming back and forth between America and Japan that still work that style. But most of the guys that work that style over here are actually, immigrated or transplanted from Japan still. But the whole thing about strong style that I really do enjoy is the fact that it seems really, really rough and like you actually have to go and fight for everything you do. It's like if you want to go and pick somebody up and slam them, they're not going to give it to you. You actually need to hoist them up, then they'll work with you on there. That's how it looks in my eyes, too. Or if you want to get that hold, they'll actually try to get away from you on there. So, like, they understand shine, heat, comeback and all that, but they make it look like it's a little bit more of a struggle as opposed to like America where we're obviously cooperating a little bit more. That's something I wish more American wrestlers, like Undertaker was actually really good about that, especially after he kind of switched over to the the MMA gloves and stuff like that. He actually started working a little bit more like that. He'd make people fight for things. Steve Austin was a little bit like that too. But it's just one of those deals where it's like it's a very credible style, and sometimes some of the stuff we've done here in America just doesn't look that credible even in territory days.
So, I mean, is strong style really that dangerous then, or is it just rough?
It's rough, but at the same time it can get dangerous when you go to the head drop shit.
Oh.
Like those really high angle German suplexes. those really high angle, like half Nelson suplexes, spiking brain buster, stuff like that. That's like, you can kick me in the face as hard as you want to. I don't give a shit. But don't drop me on my goddamn head, okay?
Yeah.
That's the part where I think a lot of people are going and, because, for example, Rip Rogers rips on it all the time on Twitter. It's like, why go and hit somebody as hard as you can when you could, dial that back halfway and make it look just as legitimate? Well, some people actually, like, for Grace example, somebody who I think would have been phenomenal in Japan nowadays with the current style that they work, even though he's not anything like it at all, but he would have fit in like a round peg in a hole, Johnny Valentine. You could go and hit Johnny as hard as you effing could, and he'd say, "Herder." Johnny liked that because his pain tolerance. I like people that hit me hard too, because from my pain tolerance being so high, I want to get a genuine reaction. Rick will, chop you really hard, but at the same time, everything else will be a little lighter. But yeah, it's like, I see what he's saying, but at the same time, some people psychologically, they need that to get in the match. Like Vader, for example, he'd tell you Vader would hit anybody as hard as he could, and he would have people hit him back, and he would take it too. So, but Vader, I think, was kind of one of the first American wrestlers to actually start kind of working that style over here, because he actually spent a lot of time over there after he broke in Minneapolis. But no, I mean, like, for example, like hitting each other really hard, okay, I get that. But the head drop stuff is kind of like timeout, because that's what shortens people's careers. So, and everybody's trying to take, like, modern strong style or Flippity do, they're trying to combine all that stuff, hitting each other as hard as they can, the high flying, the Flippity doos, as well as the head drops. And it's kind of like the risk reward's just gotten so high in the risk. It's ridiculous.
Alrighty. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go home.
Oh, but I wanted 5 more minutes!
We already had this discussion about 5 more minutes for heels.
I'll give you 5 more minutes at home.
Do keep in mind he's my husband.
Yeah.
Tune in next week as we have more wrestling talk about the business and misadventures galore. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube under Lady Morgue 0240. Anything else you want to add?
God damn it, you make me so pissed off and mad about it when you cut me short.
Well, just another day at the office. Goodbye and stay...
All right, that's it.